We maintain channels in multiple languages to break through the language barriers and connect to local communities. You will find all links on our website, ourworldheritage.org. Thank you for being with us today, and we wish you a very fruitful event. Welcome to our World Heritage 2021 debate. 2021 debate is a year of events focused on protection, conservation, and management of World Heritage. We want to uncover untold stories to broaden our views on heritage practices and future perspectives. Knowledge gathered this year will be published in 2022 on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of the Convention. The Our World Heritage Initiative is created by individuals working on 100% voluntary capacity. We would like to point out that Our World Heritage provides an open dialogue platform that is based on voluntary work of session organizers and speakers. Our World Heritage welcomes diverse viewpoints in the spirit of collegial debate where mutual respect is afforded to all. Please note that the expressed views do not necessarily reflect the official position of Our World Heritage. We thank today's speakers for telling their stories, and we thank you, the listeners, for your kind interest and questions. If you want to remain up to date on our activities, you can follow our social media. We maintain channels in multiple languages to break through the language barriers and connect to local communities. You will find all links on our website, ourworldheritage.org. Thank you for being with us today, and we wish you a very fruitful event. Welcome to our World Heritage 2021 debate. 2021 debate is a year of events focused on protection, conservation, and management of World Heritage. We want to uncover untold stories to broaden our views on heritage practices. We want to uncover untold stories to broaden our views on heritage practices and future perspectives. Knowledge gathered this year will be published in 2022 on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of the Convention. The Our World Heritage Initiative is created by individuals working on 100% voluntary capacity. We would like to point out that Our World Heritage provides an open dialogue platform that is based on voluntary work of session organizers and speakers. Our World Heritage welcomes diverse viewpoints in the spirit of collegial debate where mutual respect is afforded to all. Please note that the expressed views do not necessarily reflect the official position of Our World Heritage. We thank today's speakers for telling their stories, and we thank you, the listeners, for your kind interest and questions. If you want to remain up to date on our activities, you can follow our social media. We maintain channels in multiple languages to break through the language barriers and connect to local communities. You will find all links on our website, ourworldheritage.org.
Everyone, my name is Monica Bayeshile. I am a landscape architect and urban planner and a lecturer at the Professional Master Course in Design and Heritage at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. On behalf of our World Heritage Movement and the New Approaches team, I am happy to welcome you all to session 5 of the New Heritage Approaches webinar, entitled Managing Landscape Change, Natural, Cultural, and Intangible Dimensions. This session aims to debate integrative approaches for managing landscape change and conservation. In search for more integrative approaches, the session will examine natural, cultural, tangible, and intangible heritage dimensions and address the aspects such as the articulation between landscape planning and heritage conservation and emergent and emerging strategies and local solutions that link science, policy, practice in multiple scales of applications. Conventional sectoral approaches to addressing interconnected social, cultural, environmental, economic, and political challenges in heritage conservation are proving inefficient. Conflicting relationships between societies and their environments continue to grasp worldwide. The divide between nature and culture has been acknowledged as one of the foundational features of Western culture. The majority of countries have separate policies for natural and cultural heritage conservation in the different governmental spheres, federal, state, metropolitan, and municipal, which apply different legislation, methods, and practice. But how can we seek common ground between different worldviews and knowledge systems to address these challenges? How can we define non-fragmented approaches and strategies to deal with landscape change? Those are some of the issues that we would like to discuss with our panelists today. I will present our guest speakers for this session, and they will bring their inputs to this debate. First of all, I would like to introduce Julia Ray Paris. She's from Spain. She's a professor at the University of Seville. And her topic will be the landscape approach to urban heritage management. And then we will have Ricardo Riveros from Chile. He is a professor of landscape architecture at the Central University of Chile and president of the International Federation of Landscape Architects of the Americas region. And we have two other guest speakers, but they are having a little bit of a problem to connect. So I hope that we could count on them. But we are going to start with our two guests first. Oh, and sorry, I just saw that Tashka Yawanawa came. So I would like to thank Tashka to be here with us. Tashka is from Brazil. He's a leader of the Yawanawa people, and his topic will bring to us the views and the traditional knowledge of the Yawanawa people to contribute to this debate. So, Julia, the floor is yours.
Okay, I'm going to share. Well, first, I'd like to thank two organizers, to Monica Bahia and Daniele Pini and Vera Tangari for inviting me to the event. It's a real pleasure to be here. Once this introduction and contextualization about whole is done in the previous session, I will show the Cuenca case study developed between 2014 and 2015, where a project was made to implement the whole recommendation. The purpose of this case study is to present the methodology created according to the whole approach through the identification of cultural values among all the actors involved in the city, draws up a series of sustainable urban development strategies. The construction of this methodology is based on the analysis of the city from multiple disciplines: In this respect, the reality is that the management of the Historic Center of Cuenca is regulated by the Department of Historic Areas of the Municipality of Cuenca, a department made up mostly of architects with a vision of heritage still limited to building conservation. Returning to the six-step action plan, the proposed method allows academics to develop the first 5 steps and to use community engagement and knowledge and planning tools. You can see here the other 4 tools. Government support is fundamental to complete the process in the rest of the steps, which essentially lead to a successful application of the whole notion. And the interest in the research process in implementing the process in Cuenca has led to its incorporation as a Latin American pilot city for a program developed by the WITRA. Cuenca is the 3rd most important city in Ecuador in terms of population size and administration. It's located in a valley of the Andes. And this inland colonial city is in southern Ecuador. Its urban layout corresponds to the Indian law conformed by a grid pattern brought by the Spaniards. Cuenca is formed by 3 terraces, and this characterizes the views to and from Cuenca. Also, Cuenca was a very small city with 5,000 inhabitants and the agricultural center of the region. But in the second half of the 20th century, Cuenca had an economic boom, and as a consequence, a great urban development of the city took place. The colonial houses were replaced by a new architecture that mixes local and European style, but also they have a complex contemporary architecture. Nowadays, religious architecture constructs the urban skyline with the strong presence of land, rivers, and the materiality of the red brick and tile. The Historic Center of Cuenca, included in the World Heritage List, includes the territory that was occupied by the city of Cuenca in the first half of the 20th century, the archaeological site of Puma inscribed the site on the basis of criteria 2, 4, and 5, which are linked with the inland Spanish urban planning, fusion cultures, and landscape. 15 years after this recognition, the lack of an updated management plan for the historic areas has put the inscription at risk. In that moment, the University of Cuenca wanted to work in improving this situation, so they did a previous study, which was carried out in 2012 by the project lead, CPM, and this showed why it was necessary to implement the whole approach in Cuenca. Degraded areas, the disappearance of historic buildings, backyards and gardens, flooding caused by the proliferation of plots which have been converted into parking lots, lack of accessibility, gentrification, insecurity. In view of this, we started the project PUT. This is the name, it's very long, the assessment of the cultural and natural heritage of the city of Cuenca from the strategy of sustainable development supported in the recommendation on the history urban landscape. So the definition of whole provides the what, making reference to the multiple information layers from whole's definition, and the where, the whole city beyond its area nominated as a World Heritage Site. We need the how, and we thought to overlap the information from all the layers required by the whole, including different disciplines beyond the architecture. The 3 defining characteristics of research in progress are the broader view of heritage city as a whole, interdisciplinarity, and the important role of the citizen. This experience serves to accomplish the following objectives. 1, evaluate Cuenca's state of preservation, define the current cultural values of the city, identify the impact that affect the heritage values, and making a manual of good practices. The methodology of research is a mix between natural and urban fields composed of 4 phases and on the basis of the action plan established by the whole approach. The phase 1 is an analysis of interdisciplinary contributions. The analysis carried out by multiple disciplines defines the key physical or territorial, urban, and heritage elements that make up the structure of the city, which is the step 1. The phase 2 is the definition of cultural values and attributes and the identification of vulnerabilities, step 2 and 3. And the phase 3 is the identification of sustainable development strategy through the integration of previous information into an urban development framework, step 4, and prioritization of protected actions, which is the step 5. And phase 4 is establish local partnerships. Let's start with the phase one, the analysis of interdisciplinary contributions, and with the first block, studies of territorial of urban character. And the first study is the influence of conditioning of the territory in the urban configuration of Cuenca. The main elements of hull in Cuenca are mountains, plain, rivers, river escarpment, and fall escarp. But in addition, the geologists studied the rivers and the quality of the land, identifying different areas of high soil strength in several parts of the city, which allows the construction of tall building, which is a danger for the landscape of the city. The natural landscape and analysis of the vegetation and fauna has been done from the environment by point. A lack of green areas inside the city is identified, how consequence the loss of wildlife. In El Ejido is the only area of the city where we have river edge, parts and vegetation in each lot, which is decreasing, but they are a high pollution caused by the traffic. We did a review of the regulatory system after detecting that Cuenca has an important quantity of regulatory bodies that control its work in various aspects related to the material and immaterial heritage. We proceeded to cross the information of 3 of the most important regulatory bodies with the dimensions presented for the diverse disciplines that are part of our research. From this, we can determine that in several of set areas, there is an interference which in varying degrees is conditioning its development, and thus the shaping of a certain type of urban landscape. A historic cartographic study, the objective of this document has been to understand and reconstruct Cuenca's urban revolution and its internal and outward planning. And we have considered those moments clearly defined by significant socioeconomic change for the city, which influenced its urban architectural configuration and consequently its landscape. The study of relationship between population density and land use, we have identified 3 ranges of density, low, medium, and high. So it's alarming to confirm, for example, that the central area of the historic district have the lowest density of housing, there being even specific areas that completely lack population. And on the contrary, they present a high density of land use linked to the marketing of crass, changing administration and management. The second block, studies of heritage character. The first study is the archaeological component in Cuenca. And the only places are the pre-Hispanic site, Pumapungo and Todos los Santos, which contribute with great force to the configuration of the city's landscape. But on the other hand, surrounding areas of the city from a circuit of archaeological landmarks having to do with ceremonial place and by point of the city. Also, intangible heritage and the characterization of Cuenca's whole. The study tried to cover the 5 areas defined by the UNESCO in 23. And said maps demonstrate that almost the totality of the manifestation of the intangible heritage is concentrated in the historic center, which reign weird exception in surrounding areas. And in addition, we have identified an intangible heritage in El Ejido, which don't exist in the historic city, and it's linked with nature, culture, and sport. Economic activities in Cuenca, we have studied the 2 great main economic activities in Cuenca. Tourism, it's concentrated in the historic city, and itinerant trade. The reference to informal trade still is present in and is very important. No? They constitute elements that invigorate the use of space, giving it variety and contributing to the configuration of its character and identity. A study about architectural typology of the city of Cuenca to identify the percentage of the architectural typologies in the historic center, colonial, republic, modern, and contemporary, taking into account its state conservation. And the most alarming data obtained, it indicates that 52% of the architecture mapped correspond to the typology of modern architecture and 15% to contemporary architecture. So this data makes clear the scant existence of historic architecture in the historic center and its poor state of preservation. The value assessment category of built heritage with the categories and information obtained from the heritage inventory in 2009. Several maps were generated that evidence that the assessment is done only for the particular value of building, no? Both in the historic center and in El Ejido. And the third block, the perception study, with the first study, a critical historic review of images, to identify transformation and visual impact. We can see the proliferation of architecture in height with different materials and how the views out onto the territory and the city center are interrupted. And the last study, the perception of hull in Cuenca from the citizens participation workshop, the objective was to know their perceptions and important elements of the landscape of the city. The recommendation on hull suggests using tools for civic participation adapted to the local context in order to establish safeguarding measures for sustainable development of the city. A key component, and this is very important in the methodologic process applied in Cuenca, is the fact that input has not only been received from experts, but the opinions of citizens have also been heard. This process included workshops which took place in social affinity spaces or neighborhoods, and in addition, a photography contest open to the public and a driving competition for children were part of the activities organized to encourage citizens' participation and to know a more whole vision of the different actors of the city. 2,000 participants attended to the workshop. Visual techniques as well as brainstorming support the 5 activities rise to search for identity elements, anomalies, heritage values, units delimitation, and reflections to better conserve the city's heritage. The results indicate a shared interest on elements embedded in the collective memory, such as the main cathedral, the river's flow sound, traditional flowers of gastronomy, natural elements, mountains, river, tree, birds, and essence, amongst the most frequent. Anomalies ranged from the deterioration of building to transportation and insalubrity issues. Many public squares and parks were ascribed with heritage values with bone importance for their daily interactions. When people defining the area limits, the lexis use included the area we control and we have lived since ever. And finally, the reflections mostly raised a desire for pedestrian areas and the incentive of housing in the city center, as well as the safeguarding of river banks. So as you can see, the inclusion of community actors from the initial phases was possible due community association and neighborhood leader, which is a characteristic of the context. And so far are the results of the analytical phase. These studies are combined and managed using ArcMap. The existing data given per plot has been grouped in density spots and converted into a raster image that indicates the areas with greater convergence. After the mapping phase, the phase 2 is the definition of cultural values and attributes, which was possible thanks to a second participatory workshop called Visionary Conference, managed by the university, the municipality, and UNESCO. As previously mentioned, after cross-checking the information, the diagnosis was prepared for validation with the community, management and administrative institution, as well as technician and expert. Working groups were set up by them, architectural heritage, culture, environment, socioeconomic, and regulation, based on the information available and addition to validating this information, cultural values and attributes, the step 2, and vulnerabilities, the step 3, were defined. A lot of very interesting information came out about what to protect. Territory, you can see here the different attributes and values, intangible heritage, and of course, architecture. They were highlighted as the key attributes to protect, and their values were identified, as you can see. Issues that make heritage particularly vulnerable were also identified: private interest over public interest, lack of research and economic resource, increased pollution, uncontrolled tourism, economic profitability.
This declaration appeals to the historical importance of one of the main ports of the South Pacific. This allowed opening trade in the 19th and 20th century to place previously unthinkable. Due to the above, typical characteristic of a port city is the cultural diversity provided by travelers and nationals, who then mix it, reflecting involveration and architectural imprint, landscape, and unique identity. A landscape perceptual language, local and unrepeatable. In the world in the words of the governmental foundation Image of Chile, Valparaiso, it is not only a city with a special architecture, it is also a place where each of its corner is overflowing with color and life, where each corner is a reflection of its people and its history. If we contrast the above to the definition of landscape by Joan Noguet, the conceptual closeness of the discourse is evident. Valparaiso has not escaped the consequence of climate change. A mega drought added to other factors led Valparaiso to suffer in 2014 the largest fire in its history, which, in addition to the unfortunate people who died, were injured, and left homeless, put the city at serious risk from a heritage perspective. In front of the fire, Michelle Bachelet, then the president of the Republic of Chile, said the following: maybe it is the worst fire in the history of Valparaiso. The perfect fire. This was published by the BBC News. It began in the hills of Valparaiso, World Heritage City UNESCO, and headquarters of the Chilean Parliament. The fire started in the autumn afternoon of April 12, 2014. He was called Perfect Fire in the first instance by the intendant of the Valparaiso region, who explained the following on the Bio radio station in Chile. You, you can read the sentence. So the fire appearing from the south to the urban space of Valparaiso. The fire devastated the uninhabited landscape. I'm talking here about the native forest, ecosystem, and stream present in the hills. We could call it the ecological structure. Later, the fire reached the inhabited landscape. That is the socio-cultural structure, the communities. While it is possible to do this fractional analysis, it is impossible to fail to attend to the condition of integrated operation that the landscape has. So we need strategies that enable mitigation and adaptation, and thereby safeguard heritage landscape from larger geographic units that address their landscape context. These strategies to global change come paradoxically from local opportunities. In the case of this presentation, from the local landscape approach and its management. I am landscape architect, so as a landscape architect, I work for preserve the landscape values for the community that inhabit in the landscape. I think later in tourism or other activities and others person. While the focus of study is on the analysis of the speed and magnitude of the change affecting the landscape from the economic, social, and environmental force that climate change. How do we act two aspects of local action from a vision of landscape as a landscape architect and in a transdisciplinary way? Local opportunities in the macro scale, in a mixed environment at the ecosystem level. Thanks to work by Professor Claudio Magrini and Varela from the Master in Territory and landscape of the Diego Portales universities, which has been in development for many years. It has been possible to study many of the variables that play essential roles in the climate change process in the site. Now, I will do a very brief summary about it. The 30-30-30 phenomenon has been historically documented through a solid scientific basis developed by the Institute of Geography of the University of Valparaiso. That means that with less 30% humidity, more than 30 southwest wind knots, and more than 30 Celsius degree, we have probably a large fire. So we can't manage the wind, we can't manage the temperature, but yes, we can manage the humidity. So uh, we thanks to this kind of studies, we have these 5 strategies. First, fog uh, fog capture in the upper area of the hydrographic basin. Two, strategically increase the number of water bodies existing in the territory. This strategy based on functional water reservoir and others that can be used as swimming pool in the summer, seeking to connect communities with solution strategy. Three, ecological restitution. Four, restoration of urban stream. Mass of the stream show deterioration condition due to soil fillings and because they have become illegal garbage dump. And five, relocation of the dry port currently proposed because since it is located in a place with high environmental value. So, according to the above, and in a, now in a meso and human scale and urban context, we can deduce that the process of recovering neighborhoods devastated by the fire cannot be an ordinary plan for housing reconstruction. Rather, it should seek to return these identity features to the neighborhoods and their inhabitants as an important factor to consider from the beginning. But you will understand now why this phrase is brightened. This phrase say vanished identity. Where where were the colors, the line, the material of the perceptual language of Valparaiso go? What where what happened here with this image? So this something is missing, a different landscape to what was previously perceived, a stranger perceived, more so a neighbor, an inhabitant. These new houses, uh, these new houses is the result of the reconstruction plan. With their new materialities, incorporate new texture, new colors, and new lines to the neighborhoods, different from what they had before the fire. Therefore, the question arises about the existence of conciliation or not among this new urban solution proposed by the reconstruction plan in relation to the perceptual language of the local landscape that was before the fire. The change in the perception of the neighborhood suffered by the inhabitant is evident. This is reflected in the loss of value of the perceptual language of the neighborhoods, which define its landscape and its identity as its own collective heritage of the city of Valparaiso. The inhabitant uh, of Valparaiso were the inhabitants of Valparaiso part of this situation, or rather, were they taken into account to participate in the process of rebuilding their neighborhoods? How we how have we built the neighborhood of Valparaiso as a state, private sector, professionals, academics, and citizen? However, if if each human group has a perception of the natural or cultural landscape that it inhabits, which belongs to you, to its generation, that it belonged to previous generation, and that it will belong to future generation. The above, should it be taken into account to design, rebuild, and improve neighborhoods, public space, and housing? It is possible to recover the identity of neighborhoods and value their perceptual attributes. And finally, how to know the perceptual language of the landscape of a community to apply it in the design, review, and improve of the neighborhoods. The fact is that due to the urgency of the reconstruction of the neighborhoods, that neighbors had a very low participation in the decision that were made about their new neighborhoods. Even more insignificant, it was citizen participation in issues that were difficult to diagnose, such as the recovery of the landscape identity, which appears as an intangible, almost unapproachable for the authorities, even in a World Heritage City like Valparaiso. It is indisputable. There is a high degree of dissociation between the proposal of the government reconstruction plan and the recovery of the perceptual language of the landscape that existed before the fire. According to the above, it is necessary to state that it is urgent to resolve the lack of conciliation of urban solution with the perceptual language of the local landscape. If not considered, it will imply a new impact for the inhabitant of Valparaiso, the impact of losing the right to the neighborhood, its landscape, its identity, and heritage. For this reason, the ONG Heritage and Landscape of Chile, through a participatory workshop, will apply the perceptual landscape language methodology, seeking to configure urban landscape of quality and equity, where the perceptual and sensitive relationship between the inhabitant and his territory is valued. As an experience of the sense, the landscape has an unique external composition and expression, which was formed from a natural evolutionary process added to the subsequent human action. This is how each landscape has color, textures, shapes, lines, materials, even fragrance and sounds, temperatures, and specific taste. That is, each landscape has perceptual data, which are recorded in the individual and collective memory of its inhabitant. This is what make up the perceptual language of landscape. The perceptual language of landscape is obtained through a methodology developed by the Heritage and Landscape ONG. This consists of transforming the perception that people or a community have of their landscape in a data as objective as possible by means of systematical applied techniques until they reach, validate, approve the registered perceptual language by the own community. This last stage of the process is constituted as formal agreement, where the community approve with its signature the result of a methodology, validating the perceptual language of the landscape that was registered for the participation. The methodology allows to collect data from the community to transform them into input for the design process called perceptual keys of the local identity, which are the key to carry out an assertive management that recognizes and values participatory diagnosis to later establish guidelines and design criteria for new intervention in the neighborhoods. The challenge consists in providing a tool that improves decision making for the design, planning, and management of public and private action and investment for projects of reconstruction and implementation of neighborhoods, considering the values of identity and perception of the community. Therefore, it implies the use of a new participatory methodology as a social right, not only as a modality for sustainable design, which relate local perception and sensitivity with public and private action, considering the landscape and the environment. Finally, the objective is to apprehend scenes of the inhabitant and the community, the perception, the individual and collective memory, and the tangible and intangible value of the landscape. Landscape that in some cases have been inhabited by several generations. Uh, for the end, from this data record with a participatory nature, the perceptual landscape language of the inhabitant of the community devastated by the fire of 2014 can be identified, systematized, and reconstructed. With this, the doubt of the reconstruction plan will be settled, since it will be helping to recover the identity of the neighborhood and landscape of Valparaiso, that postponed scheme of the reconstruction. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Ricardo, for your inspiring presentation and also to bring important inputs to this debate here. And of course, to stress that the landscapes go beyond their visual aspects. There are many, many other aspects that we have to address. Thank you very much. And right now, I will pass to Tasca Yawanawa, and we are going to have our questions and answers after his talk. So I would like to thank very much Tasca to be here with us. Are you listening, Tasca? Tasca is a leader of the Yawanawa people.
Yes, I'm here, but I don't know if my camera is working. Let me try here. Just a moment. I'm somewhere.
Thank you.
I think I'm here somewhere.
Yes, yes. That's great. So thank you very much to be here with us.
You're welcome. Okay, let's just finish here. Good. Well, I'm Tasca Yawanawa. I'm one of leader of Yawanawa people. The Yawanawa people lives in the Yawanawa territory, which is located in the state of Acre in the Brazilian Amazon rainforest. Lives about 1,250 people Yawanawa, the Yawanawa territory. We are about 8 villages. Each village is located along of Gregory River. The Yawanawa people lives in the Yawanawa territory from immemorial times. the earth, the beautiful of the nature means to us life. In our land, our people, our ancestors lives forever. And we are the generation, we are holding this knowledge. From immemorial time, our people use the nature for material to build the house, the forest to hunt, the water for drink, and for fish. For us, the beauty of the nature, of the landscape, and not just material, and not just what the eyes can see, but also what our heart can feel. Because for us, everything have a spirit, everything's connected. We don't see just a beautiful lake or a beautiful mountain if we don't see the whole life is inside. If it's healthy, it's his beauty. The beauty is not just what the eyes can see. For this reason, every time when Yawanawa goes to the forest, get the medicine they need to ask permission for, because the medicine plant, the medicine tree, they have a spirit. The medicine man need to be connected with the medicine to ask the power to healing the sick person. And for us, the nature is very well connected with the human being. Unfortunately, on the time, the human being have treated so bad the Mother Earth, have been destroyed, have been burning, have no respect for the planet where we live. We're born here, we live here, we're going to die here. We not come from another planet. We come from this planet. And what's the legacy the human being going to leave for the future generation? I think if we want to live a beautiful landscape, a beautiful planet, a safe planet where the future generation can be, we need to work with the young generation right now, because they're going to be the future. We need to prepare the trail where they're going to be walking. For this reason, when we still little, we learn from our elders. We learn from our parents how to respect a little frog, to respect a big jaguar. We respect a little birds because they are so important no matter the size they are. Also, we learn from the beginning that every piece on the land, they have a spirit to honor. We need asking permission for wherever we do. We see today a lot of disease happen in the world. Maybe the answer can be in the middle of the forest, because indigenous people have been surviving all kind of disease, all kind of ethnocide. And today, we're still here, wherever happened. But indigenous people just going to be able to share the knowledge when people show them respect and when people have a time and patience to listen to them. In many countries, indigenous peoples did not have respect. Many governments think indigenous peoples is not cooperated for the progress. But what is really the progress? I think the progress is killing the humanity today. It's killing all of us. I think COVID-19 is killing all everybody, no matter where you live. If you live in New York, if you live in Bangkok, if you live in Paris, or you live in the rainforest. You know why? Because we all are connected. We are human. We live in the big village where everybody's connected. It's no matter if we live in the jungle or you live in the biggest city. You are a human being. You cry, you be angry, you laugh, because we are just human. It's time to come together to help each other. Sometimes when I go to the big city, I saw so many disasters happen. Like if you go to the big city, you cannot see the sky. If you go in the next city, you cannot never you see the sky, always a lot of cloud, smoke by the cars. Think live this forever. You born, you know, you live forever like this. And also we have to learn, also conciliate. We cannot live alone. We can help each other. I think in the city, in the urban area, a lot of people have a lot of resources and the materials. And in the communities, we have a lot of knowledge. How about we share each other to help each other? Because nobody cannot live alone. In the history of the humanity, when the peoples start living together, coming together, they come more strong. They start building things. I think it's time to build alliance between South and North and the hemispheric. We are here. Today, indigenous people organized by the organization. They maintain the language, the culture, the spirituality. Our spirituality is our balance to live well in this world, well with the planet, well with people. In the spirituality, you cannot hide from anything because you are in the light. The light shows you everything. A year ago, I was initiated in the Yawanawa Shaman path. After 2 months, isolated in the jungle, no contact with anybody, I did a Muka Rara initiation. You be isolated for 4 months. The first 2 months you are alone. Just one person come to every end of the day, he gave you a little, very little food. You pass the whole day drinking ayahuasca, uni, and rapé, tobacco. Was one day after two months, I was alone. After a raining day, in the silence of the day, and the thunder noise, I feel so empowered. I feel that nothing can affect me. I feel so protected. I feel a lot of peace, love, harmony. I, I say, oh my God, I think for the first time I met the presence of the Creator in my life. And this changed for my whole life today. For this reason, I'm sharing with you this vision. Thank you guys for giving me this opportunity to share a little bit about the Awanawa, about our spirituality, and how indigenous cosmovision see the people and the planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tasca, for this very sensible talk that showed us the resistance of the indigenous people in Brazil and also of your knowledge and your potentiality to us to face different challenges that we have in urban context, and also for sharing this vision that you have, and to stress the importance of form alliance. So thank you very much. I will, before passing to the audience and read their questions, I would like only to emphasize some points here. I think that you all gave very important inputs, and I thank you very much for that. You talk about the importance of integrating scales to develop transdisciplinary and landscape-based strategies, and especially grounded in the nature-culture linkages, to rethink the urban planning, to embrace heritage planning. This is a very important thing for us in the urban environment. And also in all your talks, each of the speakers also stress that landscape go beyond the visual aspects that we might initially think. And this is something that it's very important to consider. So I think that resuming all that, I think it's very important that we shift from the scientific or the expert views and valuation to the valuation of the landscape and the heritage by the length of the indigenous and local communities. And also to instead of focusing on tangible values, we have to embrace the linkage with cultural, spiritual, and rights-based approaches. So this is something that we have very much to consider. And finally, that one challenge to us is to integrate scientific and traditional knowledge and in the evaluation processes, and to engage, how to engage. We have to bring those the different voices, and that's what we are trying to do here, to bring these different voices together so that we can find a solution, find a way to go through all those different challenges that we face today. So I would like to thank you very much for your talks, and I will pass, I will read the questions, okay? The first question is to Julia. It's an anonymous attendee that is asking, how was the Cuenca project funded?
It's true. I forgot talk about this. Well, was a mix. I applied for funding. There was a call from the University of Cuenca. So the middle of the project was funding for this by this call, and the other half, the professors with their schedule and with their salary. I don't receive absolutely nothing. the, 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 the funding was to people from the other disciplines and mainly to the students.
Thank you, Julia. I have another question to you. It's from Jana Chaudhuri. She congratulates you for your brilliant presentation. And she asked she said, it appears that who works only in medium-sized urban areas. What are the challenges in bigger metropolis while implementing the whole approach?
This is the big question. Cuenca is an intermediate city, no, a medium city, around 300,000 inhabitants, more or less. The thing is, the whole has not been implemented in a big city. So if I had to do it, I tried to identify several landscape units inside the city to try to implement in different points. Because, for example, I think in a city like Rio de Janeiro or Sao Paulo or Madrid, includes even the same Sevilla. Sevilla has near the million inhabitants. It's very, very, very difficult. If I had to do it, I tried to identify in a previous study to identify some landscape units, because at the end you have to do a previous study. So I incorporated, I could incorporate it intermediate steps to, after this previous study, identify different landscape units and later focus in each of one to try to implement, because the work with the citizens, it's complicated. Maybe for this reason, the whole implementation is only try in medium cities or small cities, maybe.
Thank you, Julia. Did you finish answering? Did you finish answering the question so that I can?
I finished.
Oh, thank you.
Very good.
I have another question. This one, I think it's for everybody. It's from Fernanda Moço Foloni. She, first of all, she thanked all the panelists for the presentations, and she asked, both in the environmental and the heritage, on the environmental and the heritage issues, we have debates about conservation. Sorry. Both on the environmental and heritage issues, we have debates about conservation or preservation, in the sense of how far we can change the landscape to encourage a better use of the space by the population, working also on the aesthetics of the place. How do you see this fine line when proposing new approaches in a bigger scale, like urban planning? I think it's more for Ricardo and Julia.
I'm reading the question, so if you want to start, Ricardo, because I'm still reading.
Okay. Yes. Yes. This situation depends, because we all know about there are there aren't a formula for the management of the heritage. So in the case of the landscape approach provide a, a large list of tools for found the relation between people, communities, and the territory. So the landscape as a face of the territory, it's we need to establish the values that this relationship between people and territory have. So I think if we if we if we can if we can found the uh, landscape values about the relation between territory and community, this is the first instance for determinate a formula for the the kind of intervention in the heritage. Landscape provide this kind of tools as a objective methodology. For example, in Spain, maybe Julia know the catálogos process in Barcelona, in Catalonia, and in Madrid, the Atlas in for that two element, that two methodology that allow for us for know the relation between uh, communities and territory. This is the connection. This two element for landscape. Really uh, it's really necessary to identify for determine the intervention as a bigger scale for it's necessary know this relationship, this relation for implement a determinate kind of management in the territory. So I, 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 I can talk about this, and for me depends uh, how I say depends of the relation about uh, territory and community, and for us and thanks for the tools that have how landscape architect and that element, that methodology provide uh, us a possibility of intervention even for the heritage landscape.
Well, I was reviewing the question. There are two questions.
Yeah.
How do you see this fine line when proposing new approach in a bigger scale, no, like urban planning? I think Ricardo has answered. I agree. So also maybe to add that at the end, when you say how far we can change the landscape to encourage a better use of space by the population, working also on the aesthetics of the place. At the end, you need a consensus. At least in Spain, traditionally, was the administration who decided how we have to intervene in the public space. And now we are trying to implement different tools or different approach to work with the community. We usually do this in small areas or in small neighborhoods. So at the end, I think when you talk about this fine line, propose a new approach in a bigger or in a smaller scale, at the end, you have to reach a consensus because it's the only way to do a real inclusive planning, no? And the second question is how much the master plan helped your work? Did it already provide guidelines to support this idea, or did you have to propose major change? In the case, I guess it's for both. In the case of Cuenca, the review of the master plan is that not existed master plan. So at the end, we only had to review the heritage normative to explain that it's not enough because it was a normative focus only in the heritage building. So the rest of the kind of heritage is not taken into account. So in my case, was easy. I don't know, Ricardo, is we have if
Yes, in the case, yes, because in the case of Valparaiso, it's a city between hills, is a lot of hills, maybe 24 or more, and with a little area near to the coast, but it's artificial soil. So in the case of Valparaiso, we need approaches from the ecosystem level and the urban level, because there are there are they have a integrate operation. So the transdisciplinary way regard to landscape architecture, it's about consider the basin of the landscape, about the ecological structure, and also the sociocultural structure. That is the part in the city, urban community, etc. So the we need have different approaches from urban approach in the for the neighborhoods, because we need attend to small communities for identify the identity of the place. This is one thing, and very complex thing. And and then in parallel, we need to uh, establish the analysis of the ecological ecosystem. In this case, the hills and the streams and many other aspects, vegetation, etc. For this foresee integrate these two scenarios, but it's all in the same time. It's not 1 first and 2 second. No, it's all in
integrated.
in the same side.
This is the main thing of the landscape. No, we have to try to understand together.
Yes.
All the parts are totally related between them. So at the end, when you are trying to management a landscape, you have to try to work with the economic layer, historic layer, social layer, architectural layer. There is many layers,
yes, many
disciplines to work in the cities. So
yes. I have another question.
Monica?
I have another question. Sorry.
Okay. No, one more thing, Monica, about it's very complex for us in Latin America, because Julia have in Europe the landscape convention. So you have a lot of tools for approaches from the landscape. But here in Brazil, in Chile, we don't have a landscape convention, a law about landscape.
At least in Brazil we have a landscape, a landscape chart.
Yes, but it's considered a legal definition, Monica?
It's a kind of an agreement, but I don't know for sure if it's a regulation.
Yes.
If it's regulation, but we have at least in Rio de Janeiro, we have the importance of the landscape was very stressed in the last master plan of 2011.
Oh, excellent.
Yes, it was
Yes, because
very an advance.
because for us it's really difficult conciliate the heritage landscape, but without a law about the landscape and the regulation about the landscape. So only it's a topic, urban topic in this moment.
I would like also, because we have other questions here, but Paulo could arrive at our meeting, so I would like to pass the floor for him to give his talk, because he was having a very strong climate problem. He told was almost a hurricane where he is. So I hope that Paulo can join us, can join the discussion. Paulo, are you ready?
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Look, I'm just going on the mobile because all the rest jumped. So we have no internet and no light. I'm here with the candlelight. Okay, so that's all. So I think luckily I was sending you the presentation. But this is confirming me really what I will explain now in my presentation. The strong change that now we are depending really all on the new technologies, because I am just now in at 50 kilometers from Rome. I will send you maybe after by Zoom movies taken 1 hour ago that I am receiving on the mobile of floods and things like that. So really my presentation that maybe you can load it, because I cannot do it. If I can see the screen, I can go talking about that.
Okay. Just a moment.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Muito obrigado. Aqui é pior que no Brasil. Temos a tempesta tropical. Okay. So here you are seeing we need a completely new approach to mitigate urban development and the pandemic impacts. So I think it's very important the approach that you were. I was not unable either to hear the others. Just now, 5 minutes, I was heard the other presentations. Here is necessary that we change. We have the courage and have to start bottom up to review completely the paradigms that have been ruling us for the last, I would say, 90 years. Still the Athens Charter, 1931. So it's 90 years old. Venice Declaration, Amsterdam Declaration, all this is overpassed. And yesterday I had a meeting with public authorities here in Italy, in my region, and seems like, because you never know, they're saying one thing, the politicians, and they're doing something else, but it seems that they are having another, starting to have another view. So I think I would like if you go to the first slide, if you move to the next one, to the first one, if you can move it.
Yes, is it?
Okay.
This one?
Okay, perfect. Okay. So, well, we are seeing now that the impacts that we are doing, like anthropic, on the environment, has been they're destructive. And I'm quite old that I was remembering, I was quite young, not very young. I was quite young in 1992 in Rio. And we were starting to talk about climate change. And everyone was saying, they're mad, what they're talking about, and like that. Has been passing 30 years. And now climate change is one of the most important global issues that everyone is facing. And this is show how fast things are going. So I think that the change has been starting not with the pandemic. The change has been starting, I would say, about 7, 8, 10 years ago with the new technologies, with the internet, with the global communication and all that. The pandemic has been accelerating completely what we were writing and foreseeing for 2030, 2040, I would say, for the next 10, 15 years. All this has been much faster than what we have been thinking. So I think that, but at the same time, luckily, is rising strongly the awareness of everyone all around the globe about what is going on. So I think the pandemic, probably this pandemic is ending next year, will arrive another one, but the economic effects, the returns will be very strong. They will be for a long, long time. So I think that we have to start really to view something else. In Italy has been, we are in a quite lucky situation because our history, our settlement model has been always very spread over the territories, has been always a very strong relationship between human settlements and the environment. So it is a very, very asset we have now. I would say after we're talking about it, I would like to show you, if I can, from the mobile, but I can't now, what I'm seeing out of my window. The landscape we have here is a landscape that has not been changing, I think, in 5 centuries. And this was something that before was criticized. Now this is very much appreciated that we have been succeeding to keep the environment and the landscape like it is. So I think we have to keep a very, very important that we have to keep this balance that we had till the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. We have to resume again, and we have to keep this balance. Please to the next one. Okay, they have been telling us, here you have 2 photos, they have been telling we have to go all to live in the cities. We don't know when exactly. In a certain moment, I think in the 70s or in the 80s, we were saying the way we should go to live is into the cities, that the the mankind should be all urbanized. The forecast saying that in 2050, 70% of the human being should live in big cities. Who has been deciding that? We really don't know. I think was a joint factor of economic interest, of big powers, of different interests, political reason to make people live first in a slow way, then faster and faster to move to the big cities. And this process was considered a dogma. It must be like that. If you want to work, you have to go to a big city. If you want to have an activity, you have to go to the big city. If you want to study, you have to go to a big city. Well, maybe this was true till, I would say, 15, 20 years ago. Now, the arrival, we have been living, we are talking now with you in Brazil, with the other one in Asia, with the other one in Spain. We're living in a global world, and we can do, I would say, many activities at where we are, that we don't need anymore to go commuting from suburbia downtown back and from. We can have e-learning. We can have control of our health. We can have medical attention. We can have many, many things. So we have really to think why we should go to live into the big cities. Please to the next one. Okay, here we are seeing some impacts, how some cities have been growing. If you look at those maps, I cannot read exactly what city is that now, but I think it's one of the enormous now, we call them megalopolis, that have been rising in 10, 15 years. They have been covering completely all the land. And 2 datas, the metropolis and urban areas are responsible 20% of the global climate change. They're responsible of the emissions of CO2, of pollution, and they're occupying only the 2% of the surface. So it's clear that they are one of the more dangerous impacts on the climate change. Meanwhile, smaller cities smaller settlements, that they have been always living in balance and they have been controlling the environment, they are surely one of the religions. They're offering a better quality of life. They have a nice and good environment, strong community feeling. Please go to the next one. Okay, here we have just one of the towns near where I'm living, and you can see how the town is there. But you can see at the same time, and you will see on the next slide, how the land around has been always protected with terraces, walls, taking care about the water, about the rivers, about the earth movement. There's no any more landslides. It was all perfect, all phenomena that now they're there rising. So I think that if we put like a basis for the whole world the Agenda 2030 and the 17 objectives, I think we should go back in that spirit. It's not that I'm saying we don't have to leave the big cities. No, they're a reality, but we have to stop the rush to make this become more and more. We still have now about 40% of the world population living in cities that are smaller of 500,000 inhabitants or in smaller settlements. We should try to keep them there. I mean, please go to the next one. Yes, well, we need, here you can see, for example, a very nice photo of one Mediterranean coast in which you can see how the nature is there, but how at the same time the man is living in those parts, has been using them. And I mean, we have to have surely to live, because man is a social figure. We need to live together. We cannot live like hermits in the point of the mountain alone. But we must live together in communities. So let's give more room to the existing smaller communities, because there I think we can both at the same time prevent the damages of the climate change. We can follow the 17 objectives, and we can also be prepared for other type of emergencies. What we need a new, completely different approach. An approach in which we have to take at the same time, not like it is now, divided by sectors. One is building highways, but no, I want to make a green electricity. No, I want to make industrial areas. We have to go back to what is planning. It has to be integrated planning, planning that is taking in account all the different physical, but also immaterial needs of our social and economic and environmental development. So it is really a shift. Let's go on. Yes, here I'm defending, well, smaller town and villages, they have their own peculiarities. They have a patrimony that has to be rehabilitated, has to be protected, has to be its traditional architecture, traditional materials. We should take them. We have to, at the same time, maintain all the intangible heritage that is more important maybe than the tangible one, because the tangible one you can rebuild. You can do it again after an earthquake or the intangible, no. When you're losing the intangible feelings and you're losing the characteristic of each community, the damage is done. You have to keep the original landscape. The terraces that you can see is all around the world, from the rice terraces in Asia to the terraces that they were made by the Incas in Peru or here in the Mediterranean. We have to maintain the landscape. And all these are very important assets. They are different one place from the other. But this doesn't make the difference that the approach has to be in any place different for the characteristic, but to be a general vision approach. Change. Next one. Let's go faster because it's not the time. Well, now, Here we can see that also agriculture, that before was considered, it was a very hard work, probably with the use of new technologies can become easier. Now, satellite control, drones, aerial photos, sensors, they can help a lot to have a much more, let's say, less tiring type of agriculture. And we see it is a growing demand of, I would say this is very nice, of younger people to go back to some traditional activities in agriculture. Go on, please. What was very important, I forgot to say that when we are living completely agriculture ideas, we are also not anymore having a human presidium on the territory, because before the fact that we were living all renting from the beginning. It was starting and not stopping in the beginning. Was a flood, we were making a dam. Now all this, so territories that are getting neglected and abandoned by population, they're getting more and more arid, they're getting more and more unlivable, and more we live them, more difficult is getting it. I am living half in Italy and half in Spain, living in Spain in a small village too, but if you take the rural small hamlets of Spain that are thousands with less than 200 or 500 inhabitants, all around the land has been becoming desertic. So favoring change, climate change. Instead, we are making huge agriculture intensive industrial areas along the coast. And this is not right. Let's go on, please. Next. Okay. One very important fact I was mentioning in the beginning is that everyone is recognizing that in smaller communities, it is a much stronger feeling. Pandemic has been showing this, because it has been showing that in one side it was easier to prevent and to control the pandemic. It was a very strong help between neighbors, between citizens. They have been assisting each other also during the difficulties. So I think we have to go on to focus on social cohesion. We can go on. This already I've been talking about. Go to the next. Okay, here. This is a very important table. This is a movement that has been starting in Europe in the 90s, that now we are having a new, I would say, a new push by the pandemic. A lot of authorities are starting to join this. And this is a model of a new way of the approach that I'm telling you, that is taking in account not only economic or simple financial aspects of the development, but is at the same time considering the environmental factors and the societal factors. So the approach is to see where the advantages are getting all together. It's not enough that we have a very high income per capita or very strong productivity. No, because that is not enough to make wellness, general wellness of the people. So the approach should be long-term and should be completely taking in account all the factors. I have been writing things about that. I have been sending you a link where you can read more about that. But this fact seems that is getting approved or is getting accepted by the authorities. The last European programs, Green Europe, Bauhaus Europe, they are all going in that direction. And all the huge fundings we are having now for the resilience and recovery plans after the pandemic, 60% of the financing is going in this direction. Let's hope so. Go on, please. Go on, next. Okay. These are topics that has been already talked in a lot of academic forums since many years. These are some examples, but they have been just remaining there because no one was thinking it was something so dramatic like it has been happening now. Go to the next. Next. Okay. Well, this is the conclusion. the pandemic has been showing that is necessary to change this model, and especially in those countries in which the urbanization processes are very strong, Asia, Africa, something in Latin America too, is there where you have to start to modify. If we take in account the huge megalopolis, they are, I think, around 20 now. They were expected to be 50 in 10 years. Most of them, they are located in Asia and in Africa. Go on, please. Okay, this is just one example. This is about where I'm living. I was yesterday talking with the authorities. This is a central region of Italy. In Umbria is all small villages and hills and very nice landscape. And we have already a law called the National Strategy for the Internal Areas of the country that is from 2017. And another law that is for the revival of the historic and heritage towns that we want to apply. Yesterday we met with the mayors of these cities, and seems that we are going ahead in presenting a project. Go to the next one. Next. Okay. We have, you see,
Paulo, we cannot hear you. We cannot hear you.
This is the first asset we want to prevent. We want to prevent the landscape because this asset is important. Now, sorry. Go. Can you hear me?
Yes, now it is better.
I think it's going and coming the internet because it's a disaster. Okay. We want, first of all, to preserve the landscape. That is the traditional central Italy landscape everyone is knowing, because it's the main asset, but it's the main asset for the wellness of the local people, is the main asset for other people coming, is the main asset for being a driver of the economy, like sustainable agriculture, sustainable tourism, and so on. So please go on. At the same time, we are preventing what I was showing in the previous slide is one biosphere area that is in the list of UNESCO of the World Heritage, and just near them it is Orvieto, that is an old city, I think, is from the Etruscan, Roman, and so on, that was created over a rock. So we are preventing, since I would say 30 years, preventing the rock to come down because it's living up there about 20,000 people. So but we're making all this in a general program. Go on, please. And here there are other villages in which we are now trying to make in detail interventions, one after the other, how to do it. But all this is not made one there, is all in a global vision. So please go ahead. Okay, so, and then here is the link when you can find more things about that. Tomorrow, I'm going with the mayors to the national government, and we are trying to get financing of this huge amount of money to make a global project in which we have environmental experts, we have geological experts, we have architects, we have infrastructure all together. We want to make a plan, and we have the law already existing from many years, integrated patto territoriale, territorial pact, in which we are taking, I would say, homogeneous area that is changing any country in any place, but we are focusing how to develop all together at the same time with a long, not election term, but a more longer term to make that. And I think the pandemic is giving us the strong opportunity to review all that. Thank you very much. Sorry for that, for the connection, but I hope this. I hope I can hear the other. That the webinar. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much for your effort to be here with us and for your contribution, Paulo. Unfortunately, we are without time to continue the debate because we have another session in minutes from now. So I just want to only thank you very much for all your inspiring and your very informative presentations and talks and for the great debate. I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but those things happen in the internet connection.
Prezada Mônica, mas a tormenta foi pior que no Brasil. Foi uma coisa como eu tive igual no Natal. Ficamos com todo embarrado. Tenho que ir a desagotar a água do jardim. Tá, obrigado. Tchau, tchau.
Thank you. Thank you very much for all the attendees that joined us in these sessions, and also thank you very much for our guest speakers. So I would like to invite you to be in the other sessions. There will be another one in some minutes. That will be session 6, talking about the intangible and tangible links about living heritage. So I deeply thank you, and that's it. See you in minutes. Bye bye. And thank you, Paul, for
Thank